Hello, and welcome to the Farmhouse Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin, from The Farmhouse. We're a small-scale farm operation in the outskirts of Brooklyn, Wisconsin, interested in veggies, flowers, livestock, and honestly, whatever it is our family ventures into next. It's a learn-from-experiences kind of journey that we're on, and one that many other similar farm operations are on too. This podcast will bring you closer to South Central Wisconsin's small-scale farmers, as well as share some valuable stuff happening right here in our area. Let's talk a little bit about your small-scale operation, what you're into, and how it works for you. Happy you're joining us for this episode of the Farmhouse Podcast.
Just flames burning in your fireplace. I hear your voice, and it seems as if it was
All right, what's up? Here we go. On a windy day this winter, I visited Snug Haven Farm, located in the driftless hills just north of Belleville. Bill Warner and Judy Hageman of Snug Haven are long-standing small-scale farmers in south central Wisconsin and are both incredibly well-respected in the farming world for all the work they do in our area. This was a very exciting visit for me because Bill and Judy have been in the organic farming world for the majority of their professional lives, going above and beyond to help promote and support locally grown organic products. It was an opportunity for me to see their farm in person, hear them talk about their history, the journey, and their experiences, as well as get a feel for their farming operations. Snug Haven has been and continues to be a staple at the Dane County Farmers Market, and in the early 2000s, Bill and Judy were an integral piece in getting the winter market started to allow local small-scale farmers an opportunity to sell at the farmers market throughout the entire calendar year. Their instrumental involvement with Dane County Food Council, REAP Food Group, Friends of the Dane County Farmers Market, as well as members of many other local groups, they find ways to regularly give back to the community that supports local, small-scale organic farmers. They are a large reason for the successful growth in awareness and accessibility of locally grown organic products in our area with their dedicated efforts over the past 25 to 30 years, and they deserve a huge thank you for those efforts. Thanks so much, Judy. Thanks so much, Bill. We love you. When I arrived at Snug Haven, I was greeted by the dogs and then looked up to see the view of hoop house after hoop house across the field. Bill utilizes the hoops in ways that are somewhat unconventional, but he has perfected a process to get fresh veggies throughout the coldest months in Wisconsin. The Snug Haven frost-sweetened produce is a must-try if you haven't already, especially their spinach and carrots. Bill's wealth of farming knowledge and experience is evident through conversations with him. As we walked around the property, he had lots to share about why he did it this way or that way, and wasn't hesitant to explain that there's probably a better way to do it, but the way he's been doing it is working just fine, so why spend the additional time and money to change it? Bill is an old-school farmer in the sense that he goes about things in a very practical way, such as using and reusing things to get the most out of them, like hoop house plastic, and even keeping the majority of the farm tasks manual to be more observant of things, such as opening hoop side walls and end walls or hooking up and turning on the watering lines in the hoops. I was lucky enough to schedule my farm visit over a lunch break, so I also had a chance to sit down with some of the Snug Haven employees to hear their stories as well. It was a wonderful day at the farm, and although I didn't have my microphones on and recording the whole time, I was able to get a 30-minute sit-down recorded with Bill to share with you on the podcast, and Judy even offered some advice toward the end of the recording. I hope you enjoy episode 7 with Snug Haven Farm. Welcome, Bill, and thanks for being a guest on the Farmhouse Podcast and for welcoming me onto your farm here at Snug Haven. Can you start by just giving a brief overview of the property, the location, size, kind of who's operating it, and what you have going on?
Okay. The farmstead from when Judy, my wife, was a kid was 280 acres. And her dad had to sell off two 40s, and then another 40 got sold. So we have about 160 acres here, but we farm pretty much less than 2 of it. So We farm just mostly in hoop houses. Outside we have peppers and garlic.
And we're just on the north side of Belleville.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're between Belleville and Paoli. School district is Belleville, not that far from Verona. And we've been here. We moved here in '95.
So quite a few years, almost 30.
Almost 30.
Awesome. And can you just kind of share a little bit about that journey, kind of how you ended up doing what you're doing?
Yeah, we started, I'd say in 88 or 89, I wanted to live, on my family's property, and because there was 700 or 800 acres of woods plus 300 acres of agricultural land. So I started, gardening, super huge gardening with my mom and stepdad, and bought a trailer for $500, 10 by 50, and put it behind the railroad tracks so nobody saw it, the old railroad tracks, and lived there. I knew from as kids we froze enough beans and corn that's what we ate for 6 nights a week, and we had canned enough tomatoes and storage of other veggies, so I knew how to grow veggies. So I went with my mom, and then she had handed me the can of 7 that had skull and crossbones on it, and I said I'm going to do it my own way next year, and just researched organic farming and found an article about Hoops of Plenty. New Farm magazine. Back in the day, Rodale had 2 magazines. One was New Farm and the other was, I can't remember the name right now. But so I just started putting up hoop houses with rebar, 40-foot reinforcement rod. They worked, but there's a lot of downside to them. Upside was they were cheap and easy to get. And then the first one I put, the cover didn't stay on right. So I had plastic across at waist height, and I had to get my tomatoes in the ground. And I think that night it was 7. No, that night it got down into the 20s, but it lasted. And then I had a night where within that first year or two where I was getting down to 17. We didn't have heaters then, so I just had drip tape on the tomatoes and covered them with a pot and covered the pots with roll covers and had the hoop in plastic, and they made it through that. So
that's awesome. And the offerings here at Snug Haven, can you just kind of give us the different offerings that you have, like where you distribute your product, and then kind of a breakdown?
Our winter products are spinach and carrots are the main ones, but we also do greens, collard, kale, chard. Chard's always seems to come later. I should plant it earlier. You'd think I'd learn by now. But and most of our market is 2 or 3 restaurants in Madison and the farmers market and a winter CSA. We sell frozen tomatoes. We don't grow those ourselves, but we sell that. We've been selling to Frontera since '95 in Chicago. They used to take our spinach, but there's issues with getting stuff down there and making it affordable.
Sure.
So we used to sell to 3 or 4 Chicago restaurants at one point, but now we're just pretty much in the Madison area with 2 or 3 restaurants and farmers market and winter share.
Is there one of those particular outlets that's more lucrative for you, or you're kind of your heavy lifter?
No, I would say the winter share is almost as up there as farmers market, and since the farmers market's year round, I mean, proportionally per season, I would say the winter share is probably that. It takes a while for me to get used to the fact that I got all the money now. I got to give them veggies for 6 months, But I look at it as the opportunity. I get in the fall, I get to decide if I'm going to invest something or if I'm going to catch up on my expenses. But
Sure.
We've gotten to the point where we have caught up on our expenses. And in the spring and summer, we don't do as much. We do a lot of early greens and radishes and turnips, and then we go into tomatoes. But we're cutting back on tomatoes. We're kind of trying to use summer either to solarize our hoop houses or to put cover crop in. Most people use their hoop houses for growing in the summer, and we find that the least value because by the time you get to August at the farmer's market, everybody's already got everything and you're not ahead. Mm-hmm. We didn't used to go all winter. It was usually just to try to have the first stuff at the first market, and we'd have spinach there for 5 weeks when no one else would it sometimes. So I kind of joke that being a monopoly is kind of cool if you're on the right side of it.
It's true.
I'm sure I protested monopolies in college.
Can you talk about those hoops? You said primarily you're only hoop growing, right?
Yeah, we have not quite an acre under hoop house. We have, let's see, 7 of them that are 30 by 95, 2 that are approximately 30 by 145, and 4 that are 30 by 96. So it comes out to not quite an acre.
Sure. And that solarization process you're talking about, so you're growing in those hoops, not during the summer months. Can you just talk about kind of how
I would
that
say, yeah,
works?
in the summer, we have tomatoes in maybe a couple of those houses. We used to have tomatoes in maybe 4 of them, but now we're down to just 1 or 2. And the cover crops in about 5 houses, and then we solarize 4 houses. And solarizing means we just shut it down, keep the end walls on. We make our beds for the fall, and then keep plastic on the ground and just close it down and let it cook in there. And it seems to get rid of a lot of our disease. We have some disease issues we used to have, we don't have anymore, and we have a lot less weed pressure. And then, of course, within a year or 2, the weeds pressure comes back, but not quite as bad.
Mm-hmm. And then can you talk a little bit about the soil health in there and how you have to kind of amend that or what that process looks like?
Yeah, for the soil, we work a lot of the stuff. We till in a lot of the stuff. Like when the spinach is done, there's still all the stems and all the junk spinach that's not worth. And actually, sometimes by the time we're done cutting in the spring, some of it grows to like 1.5 feet tall, and so you're working a lot of organic matter in that way. And then we also mulch stuff with leaves and work those leaves in. Or when we solarize, we then put leaves on afterwards and work that in, and that gives our trace minerals. And our pretty much the only things we add, we used to add a lot of compost, but we've had some bug issues related to that. So that's why we add a lot more leaves now. But we'll usually add a calcium product. And then what I need to do is talk to another farmer. I know that because of the high pH from Wisconsin groundwater, a lot of people add citric acid to their drip lines, but we go very unsophisticated with our drip lines. And so you can do a sulfur product that's certified organic that you can put over your hoops over time that keeps the pH in a better range.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about those drip lines? Because I notice yours aren't necessarily dripping. They're more...
We do have sprinklers and we do have drip lines.
Okay.
The drip lines were in the house that had the kale collared and chard.
Okay.
Because that's a little easier. They can get pretty tall, and so you can't always sprinkle.
Sure.
But we do have... We do run lines. The hose, I think, is about 3/4 inch, and you get a little 1/4 inch hose with it that runs to a sprinkler, and we set those up. They're about every 6-7 feet, and so it's just like a little sprinkler system that you can sprinkle the whole row, or sometimes you can sprinkle 2 rows at a time.
And the advantage of doing that versus the drip on that spinach row?
Well, it seems to. I talked to Elliot Coleman years ago, and he says it rinses down the stuff that the rain would normally rinse down, which would be some nitrogen thing. I don't know if it's nitrates, nitrites, whatever it is. I never took a biology class in my life. And by rinsing that down, we have a lot less aphid pressure. They like the high nitrogen. So in our cover crop, we don't do the high nitrogen cover crops. I think just by tilling stuff in, we get enough nitrogen in there.
What cover crops are you using when you do use cover crops?
Our main one is sorghum Sudan, because we have had a problem with something called symphylan in the past. And they can't make their own tunnels, so that they love good organic soil. But they also, they die real easily. So there's 2 ways we can deal with it. You can till right before planting. Then the symphylan will die, and we'll get a pretty good crop of spinach coming up. Because in the fall, well, if you were to farm this bug, give it the ideal conditions, those are the conditions we're trying to create to plant our spinach.
Right.
So it's kind of a...
Lose-lose.
Yeah. So we used to be till right away, that would kill them, and we get a pretty good germination. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the germination, they're root feeders, so when it goes down that 2 inches, they're just biting off that root. That's the only root there is, and they die. Mm-hmm. But somehow the sorghum Sudan, if we've had that over the summer, I know there's times you can't feed it to your cattle because there's some off-gassing, and they probably don't like to go through that gas if you've tilled in your cover crop of sorghum Sudan.
That's interesting.
So, and we usually can't plant in there for a month to 2 months after that anyway, or a month.
Sure.
So that must sit in the soil for a while because we have pretty good luck with that.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about the plant starts? So if you do anything like in a germination or what you direct seed?
In the fall, our spinach is direct seeded. Our kale and the carrots are direct seeded. Our kale, collard, and chard are transplanted. We'll start those in mid-August and then put them in the ground in early September. This year we are drying our garlic in the greenhouse and lots of fans going on it, and a silo bag over the top, keep it dark in there. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to get them out of there so we could start our collard, kale, and chard, because in the fall we'll start them in the greenhouse. You just put them under the table, and in 2 days they germinate. But it was real humid, so we couldn't finish our garlic off because it was a really humid stretch, and so they were still damp. So we had to wait a week, and that week difference has it's a daylight issue in the fall, and that week difference has made it so the kale, collards, and chard weren't nearly as productive early. So they'll come on stronger come this spring, but it would have been nice to have so we probably won't dry garlic in the greenhouse again.
Because that's where you're starting those plant starts.
Yeah, and then in the spring, we'll start them in our basement and put them in. We just made a little 6x3, styrofoam partitioned little room, and we'll put them in there in a heater. And then we'll run them down to the greenhouse once they germinate.
Nice. And
the thing I forgot to mention about the spinach germination is that it doesn't like to germinate in the high temperatures. So we'll often, in April when we're making all the beds for that, we have to shape beds. We do everything pretty much by hand. We'll till with a thing like a potato hiller and kind of start a bed, but we'll put the old silage bags over the top of the hoop house, so it's the whites on the outside, the blacks on the inside, and it'll be dark in there. So when it's 90 in August, at least you're not in the direct sunlight. It's kind of nice to work in something like that. We use shade cloth also because the spinach needs to germinate in the cooler ground, so it's cool enough if we have shade cloth or the silo bag over the top.
Interesting. So you're actually cooling off your hoops in September when you're planting those spinach seeds to get them to germinate.
Yeah, I would say in our crops for the winter, September, October, November, this first half of December, we're trying to keep them as cold as possible. The way I compare it is I have a sister that lives in Florida. She comes up here and it's 40 degrees and she's freezing and can't handle it, okay? Mm-hmm. And so I don't want my spinach growing up in Florida conditions and trying to go through a Wisconsin winter.
Sure.
So they're hardier, they're thicker, they're sturdier, the cooler you keep them. And it's just kind of the 5-6 weeks of shortest light that, this year was different than most, but for a week we had to try to thaw them out every day. Normally it's like 1 or 2 days a year where we go through and thaw it out because it's not going to thaw it out on its own.
Mm-hmm. You just do that by running a heater in there?
We just run the heater, yeah. Like I said earlier, it just doesn't pay to heat to grow, but to work in and to thaw stuff out in. I would say last year, a year ago, was pretty mild winter. We probably spent on not quite an acre hoop house. We spent maybe $1,500 or so on propane was it, which is pretty darn reasonable.
Pretty good to get a crop through the winter.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And then come February and March, the sun's up high again, and we spend our time cooling it off. And then usually we'll take off our end walls in May.
Cool. The last kind of topic question I have is just to share with us a little bit about how much you and Snug Haven give back. I know that you're community focused and you do a lot just in terms of giving back to the community. Can you talk about a couple of the different outlets that you reach out to for that? Well,
I have to blame Judy for all of that. I think ever since we've been here, it's like you got to have the kids out here. You got to have and third graders seem to be great. We started doing field trips out here, third grade, and when we were involved with the market as managers, we started a Friends of the Market. It was just to kind of do that. We did tomato transplants for my daughter's kindergarten, and then that spread to all the kindergartens in Belleville, which is 3 or 4. And so we still do those, and that was 23 years ago or so, or 24. And then for a while we were taking in, we were doing 2,000 tomato transplants because there were 3 schools in Madison. We were taking them into third grades, and Judy would go in and demo how to transplant on your tomato. We were doing super sweet 100s at the time, and kids they're so sweet. Kids love them. If the cigarette companies can use Joe Camel, we can use super sweet 100 tomatoes.
Awesome.
We'll try to hook them young too. And so really Judy was the driving force behind that. And then at some point, and she was on like the Dane County Food Council and Dane County Egg Council, and then she had pretty severe Lyme's for quite a while. I was fighting that for 5 years or more. And then so there was another opening on the Food Council, and our supervisor asked me if I wanted to be on it, so I was on it. So then I've kind of done more of that. So I'm very involved with the Food Council. Through our Winter Share program, we asked people to donate. For a while, that money was going to give people shares that couldn't afford them and had been eating our spinach for a while. And now what it is we match. If someone donates $10, then we donate 20 in food. And that kind of evolved. That switch came during the pandemic, because at the very beginning, before the county even had a program, we couldn't find, none of the food pantries would take food. We closed down our farm pretty quickly because at that point nobody knew anything. There were no masks. We were sorting our CSA in an 8x16 cooler, and with 3 people in there. And so then we closed the farm down pretty quick. And actually the hard part was we booted our daughter out of the house because she was just starting in the hospital. Like I said, this was the beginning and nobody knew anything. And so we donated all our stuff, and we got a lot of people to help us. But we actually ended up going to Feed Kitchen because they started taking food. They did meals to go, and they were delivering meals. And from there, we just made it part of our CSA Winter Share just to keep the donations going. And we used to try to grow only exactly what we need, and then if you have a little left, it's hard to just harvest a little and take it into a pantry.
Right.
And so this way we plant quite a fair amount extra, and it's just part of the system. And so it's a fairly efficient way for us to do it. And it gets quite a bit of food to pantries.
Yeah, that's really cool. You guys do that. Okay, we're going to now transition into the rapid fire questions section of the podcast.
Yes, no, and maybe.
I have 5 or so questions, and you can just answer with 1 or 2 word responses, or you can go into a little bit more detail if you want. So number 1, a mentor or person that is your go-to with a farm question.
Steve Pincus, TP Produce.
Awesome.
He's always been, I would say it was around 93. Judy and I was asked to talk then it was the Upper Midwest Organic Farming Conference. And we looked at each other as like, do we want to let everybody know what we're doing? Do we want to keep it to ourselves? And we thought of 2 farmers, and one would take 20 minutes to try to tell you nothing. And the other was Steve Pincus, who would just tell you directly, as simple as he could, how to do something, even if it affected. Some of it was like, helped me at market, and I'd be in front of him, so it would affect his sales for a little while. And so we decided that we respected Steve more than the other person, so we wanted to be more like that. So I would say Steve.
That's cool. All right, number 2, your go-to farm tool or piece of equipment.
Tiller. We're trying to do that less now that Galen's getting more involved with the farm, and Amos, who was here earlier, Amos was more into no-till, so we're trying to do more of that.
What kind of tiller do you use?
We have a BCS.
Nice.
We have 2 of them now, but the first one lasted us like 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are doing less tilling, but if, we started out with an 8 horsepower Troy built, and that takes a lot of tilling to till all the hoop houses. Sure. So
cool. Number 3, the seed supplier that you mostly use, or one that you would recommend?
I'm splitting my time between Johnny's and High Mowing. When I sit down to order seeds, I take both the catalogs and I go through. While they don't all have the same product in the same order, I just go through one and look at them both. I'm getting closer to almost half High Mowing because they're all organic, and we're supposed to buy organic seeds if we can find them. Mm-hmm. But like spinach seed, I cannot get from them because they don't have the hybrids that have the downy mildew resistance in them. And that was a big one of ours. But, sure. They each package different sizes differently, so you can kind of get a deal on a really small size from one that you can't get from the other. Mm-hmm. But I try to keep it pretty even between the 2 of them because, High Mowing was, I think, the first seed company that I knew of that was just all organic. I'm sure a couple others started that way. And Johnny's was kind of always the go-to for small growers. Mm-hmm.
Great. Number 4, best source for your local amendments or whatever you add to your soil. You'd mentioned your leaf collection.
Yeah, leaves, we just go around and pick them up. I used to go to Belleville and pick up garbage bags. And, boy, if it was a rainy Friday and I'm picking up leaf bags on Sunday, those leaves would be heavy, mm-hmm. and I had to quit throwing them in there. I got to the age where I just picked the lighter ones or just go on those weekends because the city would go around and collect on Monday morning. So I had to definitely do my Saturday, Sunday all day making trips back and forth. But now we have the neighbors who rake, and so they used to burn them, and we're like, we'll just pick them up. And then we have another neighbor about a mile away who we get a couple big bags of, a couple of the 2-yard sacks for. So we probably have 10 or 12. But other amendments, we do use like Purple Cow for our seeding mix, and we have used some of their compost.
Mm-hmm. All right, number 5. Piece of advice for a young, aspiring, small-scale farmer that may be just getting their feet wet.
Well, I used to say marry someone with benefits. And I said that at a conference, and that's just what came out of my mouth. And this girl was in her low 20s, and she's like, do you mean that? I'm like, I don't know. Other than that, I would say just go to conferences and just talk to people. You can learn conferences. You can learn the whole time you're there, whether you're in a workshop or just talking to people. So just go talk to people and just keep talking.
Yeah, you had mentioned that earlier. Even if you don't take a ton away from the topics at the conference that you go to, it's who you meet there that you can pull some information that could be tremendously valuable for you.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That was the last rapid fire question. Thanks again so much for your time and for having me out here.
It only took me a year to
you and Judy and the Snug Haven Farm here are well-respected farmers in our area, so I appreciate you welcoming on the farm and sharing all your valuable information.
It's great to have you out here, finally. That was my fault.
No problem. Any final thoughts or parting words?
But it'd be nice to have some great words of wisdom, wouldn't it?
You should have them. You have the experience.
Just be flexible. Look for dumb luck. It happens. Or recognize it, I should say. A lot of our biggest crops have found out about them through dumb luck. Mm-hmm. And just be ready to change, because we've also dumped some of our highest producing crops just because either other people are starting to grow them. So just be flexible and be open to changing.
Awesome.
Dependability and high quality products.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the two main things, the basis of any operation. If you don't have high quality products and you aren't dependable, you can't talk to the shop or wherever you're going, your customers or whatever. If you're going to be short, be truthful. That's how we made it. Because we always had high quality products. Never used leftovers.
Sure.
Yeah. And in case you can't hear what Judy said, since I have the mic, it's having a quality product. There were times, those first few years when we were living in Dodgeville, and we didn't have much money. We both took each side of the argument at different times, but it's like, we can't take that to market, but we need the money. We can't take that to market, but we need the money. And we both argued each side, but it is keeping the quality product is very important. Kind of an unofficial motto is we try to have the best and charge the most. And that's what we stay. And like I said, you saw me picking some leaves out of the spinach that you thought were fine.
I almost pulled them out of the trash.
Yeah. And it's just, they're kind of just a little different. They probably don't last quite as long in the bag. And if our main washer, there's one other guy who would have pulled out a few more than I pulled out. And maybe some of it is because I like to be kind of a smart ass, or should I say smart aleck at market. Market is like recess to me, and I kind of sometimes feel like I'm on stage, and I'm just kind of. I learned from waiting tables, if you're kind of a little smart mouth, I got better tips. So yeah, I mean, even right now when I sample carrots, people are like, that's good. I'm like, well, at $5 a bunch, it better be good. You know, I mean, it's just, if you have a good product, you can say that. You know, you can.
And your customer retention, I think, speaks volumes too.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this episode and got a few takeaways from it. Let us know if there's a small-scale farm operation you know of that could be a good fit for our podcast. Thanks for being part of our journey. Till next time, peace out.